Hi, I'm Laura with Big Green. I'm going to be taking you through our mini microgreens activity today. Officially, we're celebrating Plant a Seed Day, which happens on March 20th, but this is an indoor growing activity that you can do any time of year. Let's get started. You likely have received a kit to go along with this activity. In your kit, you have an instruction card. You have a coconut coir pellet. This is going to act as our soil for the activity. You may have two of them, in fact. You also have one or more packets of seeds. Your packets may not look just like this, and that's okay. You may also have in your packet a magnifier. And on that magnifier, you'll find centimeter and inch measuring for as a ruler. What you won't find in your packet that you will need is a container for your coconut coir pellet to go in. So if you have a cup or a bowl that you could use, or perhaps upcycle a container from your recycling or trash, what you need from the container is that it has no holes or slots in it. It will hold water without leaking. And you may want to have two, one for your base and one for a lid. And we'll revisit that idea later. You are also going to need water for this activity, roughly 1/3 of a cup of water. So if you don't have a container or water, you can pause the video in a moment and go and get those supplies. For your mini microgreens garden to grow, you're also going to need light. That might be light from a window. If you don't have a window available where you can put your mini microgreens garden, see how it grows with the lights that's generated from the indoor lighting in your home. Your microgreens garden will need air. So as long as you don't put it in an airtight container, it'll be good to grow. And it's going to need your care, your attention, and your love. So we're going to get started here. It's a simple 3-step process. The first step will be to take the container that you've identified for your coconut coir pellet, put the pellet inside, and pour in roughly 1/3 cup of water. And then we're going to set that aside and let the magic happen. So the coconut coir pellet will expand as it absorbs the water into our little planter. Make sure that you do not remove the fabric, the white wrapper, from the coconut coir pellet. That needs to stay on. It's going to be like a sleeve that holds that material together. So you can set that aside. And we're going to do a little investigating of the seeds that we're using. And then you're going to continue that investigation of your seeds as they germinate and the plants as they grow. We'll come back to that word germinate in a little bit. So we as humans have specific technology, often referred to as our 5 senses, that we can use to investigate and explore. So take a moment, you can even pause the video if you'd like, and think about what are the 5 senses. And I invite you to draw a picture of each one or just write them down, or you can have a conversation with someone who you're with. When you're ready, you can restart the video and let's check in. Did you identify the sense of sound or hearing? So you'll be using that as we go through in order to hear the instructions. Also, we'll be using our sense of sight. We'll be observing the seeds and observing other elements of the process as we go. Our hands give us a sense of touch. So you will be feeling the texture and the shape of some of the elements as we continue through this practice. And then you may or may not use your sense of smell and your sense of taste in this activity today. So if you wanted to, you could smell. What does the coconut coir pellet smell like? Does it smell like anything at all? Do your seeds have a particular smell? You can do that, or you may choose not to. That's okay. Now, taste. The ultimate goal is that you are growing a mini microgreens salad garden that you will harvest and taste. But for today, you may not be tasting anything. If you happen to have cilantro or dill seeds in your packet and they are safe for eating, you could taste them. So to review, we'll be using our sense of sound to hear, We'll be using our eyes to observe. We'll be using our hands to feel and touch. You may or may not be smelling things as you go, that's up to you. And you may or may not be tasting cilantro or dill seeds if they're part of your packet. If they're not part of your packet, I would not recommend tasting your seeds. Even if they are, it's very important that you check the seed packet you're working with to see whether there's any instruction that indicates these seeds should not be eaten. So you'll see here circled on this image that it says treated, seeds treated, do not eat. So do not eat them, even though it is a coriander seed, which we would consider an edible seed if it were not treated. Let's see what else we find on our seed packets. The seed packet will tell us the name of the plant. What do you notice here on this packet about the name of the plant? So in English, this plant is called kale. And I notice that this packet gives us the name of the seeds in 4 other languages. What else do you notice on the front cover of this seed packet? I notice there's a picture that happens to be a picture of a mature kale plant or what it may look like. On the back side of the plant, we get a lot of other useful information. At the very top, it tells us that these seeds were packed to be used during the 2020 through 2022 seasons. So that gives us 3 years to plant these seeds where we can be relatively confident in what we call the viability of the seed, or the likelihood that that life force inside the seed, which we'll talk about again in a few minutes, will actually produce a plant. Below that, it tells us on average how deep we should plant each seed. And that may vary from seed type. So generally, the bigger the seed, the deeper it needs to go under the soil. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute as well. We also see the spacing, the recommended spacing between the plants. So you could either use that to determine how far apart you plant your seeds. You could use that if you plant your seeds more closely and you get a lot of little sprouts, you could thin them, meaning you could remove some so that they are that distance apart from each other. And the reason we want that space is so that the plant has room to grow to its full size. The next item we see below that is an average days from from planting to germination, or the time at which the plant begins to emerge from the seed. Below that, we have the average days from planting until the mature plant is ready for harvest so that we can eat what we grow. This particular packet has the name of the seed company, where it's located, and a website for more information. And also it provides the scientific name of the plant. Now, there's a few things that are not going to be relevant to us in planting our mini microgreens garden. So as we're planting, we're not going to use the recommendation on how deep to plant the seed. In fact, we're not going to put the seeds under any soil or any cover. We're also not going to pay attention to the spacing. We're going to be planting these seeds really close together. And the average days from planting to germination should be shorter than what is listed on the seed packet. And we'll talk more about that and what can help make it happen more quickly. We are also not going to be harvesting based on this estimation. You'll be harvesting your mini microgreen salad about 10 to 14 days, maybe 15 days from the time you plant it. So we're going to have some fun doing something a little outside of the box of the seed packet, if you will. All right, so check in on your coconut coir and see if it has absorbed the water. And so when it's fully absorbed, you'll see that the wrinkles come out of the side. Mine has a little bit more room to absorb, but we can go ahead and plant. If yours is still really tightly compact, you'll need to pause the video and wait until it fills out a little bit more before you plant it. It might be helpful to have a pair of scissors, because what we're going to do, we're going to leave the wrapper on, but we're going to open it up at the top so that this whole top area is available for us to sprinkle our seeds. So go ahead and you can use your fingers and just sort of gently tear that open, pull it back. Again, you're not taking the wrapper off of the pellet. We want to use that sleeve to hold the material together, the fibers of the coconut coir together. So we just want to open up the surface area there. So it'll be like you see in the picture, or like this. And then you may want to have a container or a piece of paper that you pour your seeds out on. You can decide now, you get to make a choice. Do you want to plant one of the seed types that you have? Or if you have more than one seed type, do you want to mix them up? You could try to be very precise and plant half on one side and half on the other, but it's a pretty small space. I made the choice to mix mine together. So I'm going to pour my 2 different types of seeds into a little container so they don't all roll away. And then I'm going to take a pinch of them. So I have them in here. I'm going to take a pinch and I'm going to sprinkle those onto the top of my coconut coir pellet here. And I don't want to create like a heaping pile of them. So it'll be a single layer, but you could pretty well cover the surface. You can see in the photo there that you can still see the coconut coir, which is fibers from the outer coconut shell that have been ground up to make a very absorbent, water absorbent growing medium. And while it wouldn't be sufficient for filling, say, an entire bed, garden bed outside, it's great for our mini microgreens garden. So I have sprinkled my seeds on top. They pretty well cover the surface like they do in the photo that you see. And then I'm going to set that to the side. And let's take a little bit of time to consider what is that seeds need to grow into plants. So I've identified 6 primary needs. I want you to think about which ones can you come up with. I'll give you a couple of clues. One helps provide warmth. Another one, along with that warmth, when we have this other element, it helps to soften the seed coat. We'll talk about what that is again in a minute. And that's going to help the plant to begin to emerge from inside the seed. It also provides hydration. And another one is something that we need as well. And I'll give you a clue with my body. Another one, I mentioned that our coconut coir is serving as an alternative to this item that we would generally find outside in our garden. Another one, we talked about the need for plants to have this in order to grow to their full mature size. And then the final one is something that we provide as we grow our gardens. So let's see what you came up with. Did you come up with light? Again, we talked about that could be from the sun in a window, or if you don't have a sunny window where you can place your mini microgreens garden, what happens if you put it underneath a light in your house? It needs air. And people have a really amazing relationship with plants when it comes to air. So take a moment and think about, do you know the name of the part of the air that we people breathe in? I'll give you 2 choices, oxygen or carbon dioxide. Which one do you think it is? If you guessed oxygen, you guessed right. We breathe in oxygen and we breathe out or exhale carbon dioxide. It just so happens that plants do the inverse of that. What does that mean? They do the opposite. So plants, they will give off, or we could consider it breathing out, oxygen. and they absorb or take in carbon dioxide. So it's a really great partnership that plants and people have together, where the plants provide the oxygen that we need to breathe in, and they receive and absorb the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. And that's really important to helping prevent or mitigate the impacts of rising climate temperatures. We also need water. And that water and the warmth together are going to soften that seed coat, which we'll come back to in a minute. And the water also will hydrate the plant as it continues to grow. So water is a really essential element. And we're going to talk more about how to water specifically your mini microgreens garden. When we are planting outside, we're planting in the soil. And remember, that seed packet told us how deep to plant our seeds in the soil. Why would it be important that we make sure our seeds are covered with soil when they're planted outside in the garden? I can think of a few reasons. How about you? I'll give you a clue of one I thought of. There's lots of things out there, lots of little creatures who might get pretty excited about having a nice snack or meal from my seeds. So if I'm planting a garden and I essentially hide those seeds under the soil, it makes it a little bit harder for things like squirrels and birds and mice to find them. Also, if it happens to be really windy out and my seeds are just sitting on top of the soil, are seeds heavy or are they light? They're pretty light. So it's very possible they could get blown away if they're not covered by the soil. Another thing is that water that they need, if it's raining or if we're using a hose to water or a sprinkler to water, and there's a really strong flow of water down on a particular spot or on our garden beds and the seeds aren't covered, that water can move or wash the seeds away. So when we are planting our garden outside, we really want the seeds to stay where we put them. At least I want the seeds to stay where I put them when I'm planting a garden. And so it's important to have that soil to help hold the seeds in place. They also help in that, it can help in that germination process of helping to keep it warm as well. So the next thing is space. And we talked about that this one, again, we didn't keep any space really between the seeds when we planted. We're careful not to pile them up in a big pile on top of each other, but they're pretty close together there on top of that coconut coir pellet. And that's because we're only going to grow plants that are about 3 or 4 inches tall in our mini microgreens garden. And they will actually help to kind of hold each other up so they can grow when they're that close together. And because they're not growing to mature size, they don't need the extra space to spread out. But when we're planting outside, they do. And also spacing out our plants can help prevent the spread of disease between plants. Kind of interesting. And then, of course, we need to provide care and love to look after and tend to our garden. If it's not raining or for your mini microgreens garden inside, that plant is going to depend, or the seeds and the plants that are growing from them are going to depend on you to provide that water, to make sure that they're getting light. You may notice that your plants, as they start to grow, they actually lean toward the light. And so you can move them around so they can grow back the other direction. And it's kind of fun to see that happen. So let's talk about the seeds a little bit more. You, I imagine, still have some seeds left in your packet, and you can get a few of them out in front of you to look here. So when you're looking, there's really only one part of the seed that you're likely to be seeing right now, unless you have some seeds that happen to be broken. But you're really going to see, even if they're broken, they're probably dried out on the inside now. So you can pick one of those up and feel it. I have a radish seed between my fingers, and it is super hard. It's like a rock. Like, I can't smash it. I can't change the shape. So I can feel with my fingers. It's really hard. I can roll it around and it doesn't change at all. That is the seed coat, the hard outer shell, and it protects the seed from drying out. Well, what's inside to protect? What are we protecting from drying out? Turns out some really interesting things, 3 of which are the baby plant, the embryo that's there waiting inside, that's the potential for life there, along with the radicle, which is what the very first baby root is called that is going to pop out when the seed germinates. And then also inside the seed is the cotyledon, and it is all of this stored energy that the plant has to feed itself as it first begins to grow. So in our outdoor garden, soil is also important as a source for nutrients and nourishment for our plants. Well, here in the microgreens garden, they're mostly going to grow from that stored energy that's inside them, because we'll harvest them when they're so small, so young. So you can use your magnifier to explore your seeds more closely. And even on your information card on the back, there's two boxes, one to draw a picture of your seed as it is, and another to draw what it looks like underneath the magnifier. And even though you may have two very different looking seeds, like a cilantro seed and a radish seed, like you see in the picture, on the inside, they still have those same elements. All right, so you can measure as those seeds begin to germinate, as the radicle emerges and the baby plant starts to emerge, there's space on your card for you to measure how much it grows. So how tall is it on the second day, the fourth day, the sixth day, the eighth day, and how tall is it when you're ready to harvest it? And there's even space as well to draw a picture of that plant when it first sprouts and when it gets to full size. You can kind of use that to draw as you like. So again, here you can see in the top picture, that very, very beginning, looking through the magnifier as the seeds first germinate. And then the bottom picture, we have a mini microgreen salad that is very much ready to harvest. And we're going to come back to that in a moment. For now, your next step with your garden will be to identify that warm place that's well lit where you can let it grow. And we're also going to make the recommendation, well, before we get to that, you'll need to know how to water your garden. So you'll check in again with your coconut coir pellet, and if it didn't absorb all the water that's in the container, but it's expanded to its full size, for now, I would recommend that you pour that extra water out. And then tomorrow or the next day, and if you can, check it every day or at least every second day, and see if it's still so wet that you could almost kind of squeeze a drop of water or two out. You don't need to add any additional water. But if it's starting, if you start to see this wrapping around it kind of dry out, or you feel and it feels like it's fairly dry, then you're going to go ahead and add water. And the way you'll do that, remember, we talked about outside, seeds need to be covered by soil so that the water doesn't wash them away. That's one of the things that could happen if they're not. So when we're watering, we don't want to pour directly on top of those seeds because we'll wash them off the top of the coconut coir. So you're going to pour beside your pellet into the container, like in the picture. Now, what is that thing on top? Why is there that green cup on top of that mini microgreen garden? Well, it turns out that if you put a hat on it, we'll say, or you put that kind of topping or lid on, it can increase the speed at which the plant begins to emerge from the seed, or the speed at which it will germinate. So there's a few examples of ways you could do that. I have this extra bowl, and I could put it on top like this. It's still going to get airflow because that's not sealed. It's not an airtight container. So you want to make sure you're not creating an airtight container. I could use this upcycled piece that would fit over my bowl as well. So anything that's going to kind of, what it does is it helps hold that moisture in longer, and it creates a little more heat in there, like a little mini greenhouse of sorts. If you're using that extra cover on top, then you'll see your seeds germinate, or that plant begin to emerge from the seed, in about 3 to 4 days. If you don't use that, it may take longer, and you will need to water more frequently to keep the moisture there to help soften the seed coat so that your seeds can germinate and the plants can emerge. All right, so before we wrap up, what is going to happen to that seed. What is the potential for it to grow into? Well, it has the potential to grow into a plant. And let's consider what are the parts of a plant. So here I've given you some clues with some rhymes and some pictures as to what are the parts, the primary parts of the plant here. So we don't have a picture of a seed, but of course we know that everything starts from the seed. And we talked about that the radicle is the first piece to emerge from that seed, followed closely by the baby plant. And what was that radicle? It was a part of the plant. See if you can remember, it rhymes with boots, and it's down here with the worm under the soil. Then from there, growing up from those roots, we have something that rhymes with gem. What would that part of the plant be? So down here we have the roots that provide an anchor and a foundation to support the structure that comes up. And from that structure that rhymes with gem, we have additional limbs that can grow. So these, on this picture, we see 4 of them. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but off of the thing that rhymes with gem, we have things that rhyme with beef. And a plant wants to reproduce itself. So once it has taken in nourishment and hydration and energy from the sun, it's trying to reproduce itself by producing more seeds. Some plants will contain those seeds in this piece at the very top that has 5 petals in the center in this particular picture, and it rhymes with power. On some plants, that part that rhymes with power will produce from it another part of the plant that rhymes with suit. Whew, these are a lot of rhymes to keep track of. Let's check out and see if we got them all. So what is the part of the plant that's at the bottom that rhymes with boot? Roots. You got it. And then we have what rhymes with gem, the stem. What rhymes with beef? The leaf. What rhymes with power? The flower. And what rhymes with suit? The fruit. Now, which of these plant parts do you think you are going to see grow in your mini microgreen garden? Because I will tell you, you will not see all 5 of these plant parts grow. Take a moment and think about it. And if you think about the order, that may give you a good clue. Yeah. So you'll see, or you may be able to see through that little wrapper, the roots. You may also see them grow out of the bottom of your coconut coir. You'll see the stem and you'll see the leaf. Because our plants are not going to grow to maturity, we will not see the fruit, we will not see a flower or any type of fruit produced if you have seeds that would grow into a plant that produces fruit. So, what parts of the plant can we eat? When we're eating lettuce or kale or other greens, what part of the plant are we eating? How about when we're eating asparagus? So we have all the parts of the plants listed on the right side and pictures of examples of food that we eat that represent a part of the plant, but they're not aligned in order. So see if you can figure out which is which. When we're eating carrots, what part of the plant are we eating? How about when we're eating broccoli or peas, what's inside the shell, or a tomato? Did you get them? Yeah, when we're having lettuce or greens, we're eating leaves. When we're eating asparagus, we're eating stems. When we're eating carrots, we're eating the root. When we're eating broccoli, we're actually eating the flower. All of this dark green part, those are all little flower buds. The leaves of a broccoli plant look more like this leaf up at the top. They look more like a kale leaf. When we're eating the pea, the seeds inside are the seeds for the pea plant. And when we're eating the tomato, we're eating the fruit of the tomato plant. So what are you going to eat on from your microgreens garden? You're going to eat the stem and the leaf. And when you're ready to harvest, you'll want clean scissors, and you can hold on to that little bundle of stems and leaves and then cut down. You don't want to cut any of the coconut core or the wrapper off into your now what will be a microgreens salad if you choose. So you want to cut just a little bit above the surface of the coconut core. And you can use your mini microgreens as a tiny little salad. You can use them to add a little flair on a soup, or maybe they add some fancy to a cracker snack or a sandwich. So I hope you've enjoyed this activity. I've enjoyed creating this mini microgreen garden with you. And you may have a second coconut core pellet that you can use to share with a friend or a family member, or repeat the experiment on your own. Maybe you want to plant your other type of seed if you have more than one. Thank you for joining me and Big Green to celebrate Plant a Seed Day, whatever day or time of year it is that you're planting. And you can find more activities at biggreenathome.org to enjoy at home or with your friends, family, or even your class. Thank you. Bye.